The dust hung thick as flour over dust water that morning, coating everything in a fine layer of Kansas grit. Mary Lincoln stood outside Hull & Sons General Store, her fingers trembling around the small gold band that had once promised her forever. Now it was just metal, cold and heavy as the stones in her empty stomach. "I told you, ma'am," the proprietor said through the screen door, not bothering to step outside. "We don't trade for jewelry here. Cash or credit only." Mary's throat tightened. "It's solid gold. Mr. Hull, my late husband." "Don't matter if it belonged to President Grant himself. This ain't a pawn shop." The door creaked shut with finality. She stared at the ring. John's ring. The last thing of value she owned. 3 weeks since the fever took him. 3 weeks of selling everything else, his watch, her mother's brooch, even his Sunday boots. Now this town at the edge of nowhere, this dust water with its sun-bleached buildings and suspicious eyes, was telling her gold wasn't worth a sack of cornmeal. The morning sun beat down mercilessly. Mary swayed slightly, one hand reaching for the hitching post. When had she last eaten yesterday? The day before, time blurred when hunger gnawed constant as a toothache. "Ma'am?" A deep voice, rough but not unkind. "You all right?" Mary straightened, pride stiffening her spine despite the black spots dancing at the edges of her vision. A tall man stood near a loaded wagon, his face weathered as old leather beneath a wide-brimmed hat, clean-shaven, unlike most men here, with eyes the color of creek water, gray-green and watchful. "I'm fine, thank you." The words came automatic, polite as her mother taught her. He studied her a moment longer, taking in her travel-worn dress, the dust on her shoes that spoke of long walking, the way she gripped that ring like a lifeline. Then he turned to the store. "Hull needs supplies for Boone's draw. The usual order, plus," he glanced back at Mary, "plus whatever the lady needs for a proper meal." "Now hold on, Boone!" "Put it on my account." His tone brooked no argument. "And make it generous. Woman looks like she could use it." Mary's cheeks burned. "I can't accept." "You can and you will." He moved past her to the door, boot falls heavy on the wooden boardwalk. "Out here, we don't eat gold. Ma'am, we need each other. That's the only currency worth a damn." Inside, while Hull grudgingly filled a basket with cornmeal, beans, salt pork, and even a small sack of sugar, the man Boone leaned against the counter and watched Mary like she might bolt. "Name's Edison Boone," he said finally. "I run a cattle outfit about 10 miles north. Boone's Draw, after the creek that runs through it." "Mary Lincoln." She hesitated, then added, "Recently widowed." "Sorry for your loss." Simple words, but genuine. "You got people here placed to stay." She shook her head, unable to trust her voice. Edison rubbed his jaw, thinking, "Well now, that presents a problem, but maybe also a solution." He straightened, decision made. "I got 12 hands at the ranch, not counting myself. Been eating burnt beans and half-raw beef since our cook quit last month. You know your way around a kitchen." Yes, I do." "Then I got a proposition. Room, board, and fair wages for keeping my men fed. Nothing fancy, just good, solid meals. Works hard but honest. And the boys are decent enough if you don't mind rough language and table manners that make a goat blush." Mary stared at him, this stranger offering salvation like it was nothing more than weather talk. "Why?" "Because I need a cook and you need work. Because winter's coming and that ring won't keep you warm. Because—" He paused, something shifting in those creek water eyes. "Because 20 years ago, someone gave my mother a chance when she had nothing but pride and 2 young boys to feed. Call it paying forward an old debt." The basket was full now, Hull waiting impatiently for his money. Mary looked at the food, at Edison Boone, at the ring still clutched in her palm. "When would I start?" "Soon as we load these supplies. Got a wagon outside, plenty of room." He moved to the counter, pulling out worn bills. That is, if you're willing. Outside, Dustwater's single street stretched toward the horizon, heat devils dancing on the packed earth. The saloon across the way was already doing business, tinny piano music drifting through the doors. A dog slept in the shade of the water trough. Normal life, moving on without her. Mrs. Lincoln. Edison stood by the wagon, hands careful as he helped load her meager belongings, a single carpet bag and a worn shawl. You coming? She looked down at John's ring one last time, then slipped it into her pocket. Not selling it, not yet, maybe not ever, if this chance proved true. Miss Calloway, she corrected softly. Mary Calloway. I kept my maiden name. A small lie, but necessary. Widows were pitied. Unmarried women were questioned less, judged by their work rather than their loss. If Edison noticed the deception, he didn't comment. Well then, Miss Calloway, welcome to whatever kind of life Dustwater offers. The wagon seat was hard plank wood, but it felt like a throne compared to walking. As Edison clicked to the horses and they rolled away from Hull and Sons, Mary caught sight of a woman watching from the boarding house steps. Older, steel-gray hair pinned severely, but her eyes held something like understanding. That's Abigail Dunn, Edison said, following her gaze. Runs the boarding house. Good woman. Even if she'd bite the head off a rattler for looking at her wrong. They passed the church, small and whitewashed, its bell tower casting a sharp shadow. The sheriff's office, where a man with a drooping mustache sat tilted back in a chair, hat over his eyes, the smithy, ringing with hammer blows, edge of town already, that quick, and then nothing but grass rolling away like a golden sea. It's big, Mary said, the words pulled out without thinking. The land, yes ma'am, big enough to swallow you whole if you're not careful, but also big enough to let you breathe. Start fresh. Be whoever you need to be. The wagon rolled on, wheels creaking a rhythm. Mary gripped the seat as they hit a rut, and Edison steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Quick and impersonal, but solid as an anchor. First time this far west, he asked. First time anywhere but Missouri. She watched a hawk circle lazily overhead. John, my husband, he talked about California. Gold fields, fortune waiting to be made. A bitter laugh escaped. Turns out fortune's harder to hold than quicksilver. Most things worth having are... Edison's voice held weight, old pain worn smooth. But sometimes you find something better than gold. Sometimes you find a place to stand firm, people to stand with. That's worth more than all the strikes in California. The road curved, following the contour of low hills. Tall grass brushed the wagon's sides, whispering secrets. In the distance, a dark line marked trees, promising water. Shade, something besides this endless ocean of prairie. There, Edison pointed. That's Boone's Draw. See, the Cottonwoods Creek runs year-round, even in drought years. Good water, good grass, good land for those willing to work it. As they drew closer, Mary could make out buildings, a main house, solid and square, a bunkhouse, barn, various sheds and corrals. Smoke rose from a chimney, and she could see men moving about their business, the purposeful motion of a working ranch. One more thing, Edison said as they approached the gate. The men, they're rough but respectful. Anyone gives you trouble. You come to me direct, but I don't think you'll have problems. They're too desperate for decent food to risk running off another cook. Mary smoothed her dusty skirts, lifted her chin. I'm not easily run off, Mr. Boone. No, he said quietly. I don't believe you are. The gate stood open, and they rolled through into a yard packed hard by boots and hooves. Men looked up from their work, mending tack, shoeing horses, hauling water. A young cowhand, barely out of his teens, dropped the rope he was coiling and stared openly until an older man cuffed him upside the head. "Boys," Edison called out, drawing the wagon to a stop near the house. "This here's Miss Calloway. She's our new cook. Anyone has a problem with that can take it up with me after she's fed us a few decent meals." A grizzled man with skin like tanned hide stepped forward. "She's staying in the house. Got a room off the kitchen. Jefferson. Private entrance. Good lock on the door." Edison's tone was mild but firm. "That suit you?" Jefferson Mary filed the name away, nodded slowly. "Suits me fine if she can cook better than you, boss." "A three-legged dog could cook better than me," Edison admitted, swinging down from the wagon. He reached up to help Mary down, his hand steady at her waist for just a moment before stepping back, proper distance restored. "Come on, I'll show you the kitchen. Fair warning, it's a disaster." He wasn't exaggerating. The kitchen looked like a battlefield where food had lost decisively. Pots crusted with mysterious substances, a stove thick with grease, flour spilled across the floor and tracked everywhere by careless boots. But it was a good-sized room with decent light from 2 windows, a solid work table, and, blessed sight, a hand pump right at the sink. Running water. Mary couldn't hide her relief. Piped in from the creek, one of the few improvements my father made before he passed. Edison looked embarrassed by the state of things. The boys tried to clean, but they're cowboys, not housekeepers. Mary was already cataloging what needed doing. "First things first, when do they expect supper?" "Sundown, about 4 hours." She nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. "Then you'd best clear out and let me work. Send someone in 2 hours to help haul water for proper cleaning. Tomorrow we'll start fresh. But tonight," she surveyed the disaster again. "Tonight, they'll have to settle for edible." "Yes, ma'am." Edison paused at the door. "Thank you for taking the chance." "Thank you," she replied, meaning it, "for offering one." Alone in the kitchen, Mary stood still for just a moment, letting it sink in. A roof, walls, work to do with her hands, the ring in her pocket pressed against her hip, reminder of all she'd lost. But here was a stove to clean, food to cook, men to feed, simple things, real things, things that mattered in the immediate way of hunger satisfied and work well done. She found an apron, tied it around her waist, and got to work. By the time the sun started its descent toward the horizon, the smell of beans seasoned properly, cornbread baking, and salt pork frying filled the kitchen, one by one, drawn like moths to flame. The men gathered on the porch, peering through the doorway with expressions of desperate hope. "That smell," one whispered. "Lord Almighty, that smells like actual food." Mary hid her smile, stirring the beans. Outside, she could hear Edison's voice, low and steady, organizing the evening chores. A working ranch, a place with rhythm and purpose. Not Missouri, not the life she'd planned with John, but life nonetheless. And for now, that was enough. When she finally called them in for supper, they came like schoolboys, hats in hand, jostling for position until Edison's glare settled them into order. They filled their plates with reverent care, as if the simple fare might vanish like a mirage. The first bite of cornbread produced actual moans of pleasure. "Ma'am," Jefferson said after cleaning his plate twice, "I take back every doubt I had. You're an angel of mercy sent to save us from starvation." "Just a woman who knows her way around a stove," Mary replied. But she felt warmth bloom in her chest at their appreciation. Such a simple thing, feeding hungry men, but it grounded her, gave her purpose, made her feel real again after weeks of drifting like smoke. After supper, as the men scattered to evening chores and Edison helped her clear the table over her protests, he paused by the window where late sunlight slanted golden across the worn floor. "You did good today," he said simply, "real good. It's just food. Mr. Boone." "No." His voice was certain. "It's home. First time this place has felt like home since—" He stopped, shook his head. "Well, welcome to Boone's Draw, Miss Calloway. I hope you'll stay." Mary looked out the window at the vast sky painting itself purple and gold, at the land rolling away endless and full of promise or peril. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight she had a roof, a purpose, and though she hardly dared name it, perhaps the beginning of belonging. "I believe I will," she said softly. "For now, I believe I will." The ring in her pocket sat quiet as a promise kept, a past honored but not binding. Outside, the first stars began to appear, bright as hope in the darkening sky. The kitchen at Boone's Draw had been scrubbed within an inch of its life. Mary stood in the pre-dawn darkness, match in hand, and surveyed her domain with satisfaction. The stove gleamed black, the floor showed actual wood grain, and every pot hung clean on its proper hook. 3 days of work, but worth every aching muscle. The match flared, catching the kindling she'd laid the night before. Coffee first, she'd learned that quick. These men might forgive many sins, but not the absence of strong coffee at dawn. "Morning, Miss Mary." Young Roosevelt Franklin stood in the doorway, hat already in hand despite the early hour, 19 in earnest as a preacher's son. He'd been the first to offer help with the heavy work. "Morning, Roo." The nickname had stuck, despite his protests. "You're up early." "Got first watch on the herd. Figured I'd see if you needed anything before I rode out." She smiled, stirring biscuit dough. "Since you're offering, that wood box could use filling." "Yes, ma'am." He practically bounced out the door, eager as a puppy. Sweet boy, trying so hard to be a man in this hard country. By the time the coffee was ready, the kitchen had filled with the quiet bustle of a working ranch coming alive. Jefferson Davis Pike she'd near choked when she'd heard that name, and his brother Napoleon came in first, drawn by the smell of frying bacon. The Pike brothers were studies in contrast, Jefferson weathered and spare, Napoleon soft around the edges with a ready laugh. "Morning, Miss Calloway." Jefferson poured coffee with the reverence of a man at communion. "That dinner last night, the beef stew, best thing I've eaten since my mama passed." "Just following my mother's recipe?" Mary flipped bacon, savoring the sizzle. "Nothing special." "Everything you cook is special," Napoleon insisted, already eyeing the biscuits in the oven. "Why, I've gained 5 pounds since you arrived, and happy for every ounce." More men filtered in Washington Grant, the young hothead always spoiling for a fight. Sherman Barnes, quiet and competent with horses, and others whose names she was still learning. They took their places at the long table with the orderliness of men who'd learned to respect the cook's domain. Edison came in last, as was his habit. He nodded to Mary, poured his coffee, and took the head of the table. She'd noticed he always waited until his men were served before filling his own plate's small gesture, but it spoke to character. "Sheriff's coming by today," Edison announced. "Wants to talk about water rights again." The pleasant morning chatter died. Mary saw the men exchange glances, Jefferson's jaw tightening. "That snake Carnegie still trying to buy up the creek," Washington spat. "Watch your language," Edison warned with a glance at Mary. "But yes, Alexander Carnegie's been making offers on all the small claims upstream, trying to control the whole water source." "Let him try," Napoleon muttered. "Boone's Draw has had legal claim for 20 years. "Legal don't always mean much out here," Jefferson said darkly. "Not when money starts talking." Mary served biscuits. Noting the tension, water rights she'd heard enough in town to know that was serious business in this dry country. Men killed over water. "We'll handle it," Edison said firmly. "Right now, we've got cattle to tend and fences to mend. Roe, you heading out?" "Yes, sir." The boy grabbed a last biscuit, tipped his hat to Mary, and bolted for the door. The meal finished in subdued mood. As the men filed out to their work, Edison lingered. "This Carnegie," Mary ventured. "He's trouble." Edison's face was grim. "Could be. Moved here last year. Bought the old Stockton place. Calls it Black Mesa outfit now. Got deep pockets and deeper ambitions. And he wants your water." "He wants control. Water means power out here. Control the water. You control who survives and who doesn't." He stood, settling his hat. "Don't worry yourself about it. That's my problem to handle." But Mary did worry. All through the morning's work, she'd seen enough of hardship to recognize its approach. Still, nothing to do but what was in front of her: bread to bake, beans to soak, dinner to plan. Around mid-morning, a different visitor arrived. Mary was elbow-deep in bread dough when she heard the gentle knock. "Hello?" A woman's voice, uncertain. Mary wiped her hands, went to the door. A lady stood there, and lady was the right word. Despite the dust on her traveling dress, everything about her spoke of Eastern refinement. Dark hair pinned in elaborate style. Gloves, despite the heat. Posture straight as a finishing school ruler. "I'm looking for Mr. Boone." Her voice carried Virginia in its vowels. "He's out with the men. I'm Mary Calloway, the cook. Can I help you?" "Oh." The woman's face fell slightly. "I'm Martha Nightingale. I just arrived from Richmond. That is, Edison and we corresponded. He said if I ever came west." Understanding dawned. This was her, the fiancé who'd broken Edison's heart. According to kitchen gossip, Mary's protective instincts flared. "Come in," she said, voice carefully neutral. "I'll send someone to fetch him." Martha entered hesitantly, taking in the clean but simple kitchen. "It's very rustic." "It's a working ranch." Mary couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "Would you like coffee while you wait?" "Tea, if you have it." "This is cattle country. Miss Nightingale. We have coffee." They sat in awkward silence. Martha perched on the edge of her chair like she might catch something from it. Mary kneaded her bread with perhaps more force than necessary. "Have you worked here long?" Martha finally asked. "Few days." "Oh, and before that?" "Here and there." Mary didn't elaborate. Let this Eastern flower make what she would of that. Bootsteps on the porch saved them from further conversation. Edison entered, stopped short at the sight of Martha. His face went through several expressions before settling on careful blankness. "Martha, this is unexpected." "Hello, Edison." She rose, hands fluttering nervously. "I know I should have written, but Father's business failed, and I thought, you said—" "That was 2 years ago." His voice was steady, too steady. "Things change." "Yes, I can see that." Martha's gaze flickered to Mary, something calculating in it. "Perhaps we could speak privately." "Of course, Mary. Could you—" "I'll be in the garden." Mary grabbed her basket, glad for escape. But as she left, she caught Edison's look, something between apology and plea. In the vegetable garden behind the kitchen, Mary attacked weeds with vengeance. None of her business. Edison's past, his choices. She was just the hired cook. "Men are fools." The gruff voice made her jump. Florence Barton stood at the garden gate, the nearest neighbor from a small farm 5 miles east, a widow herself. Florence had stopped by yesterday with preserves and gossip. "Mrs. Barton, I didn't hear you ride up. Saw that fancy buggy out front, Richmond plates." Florence spat tobacco juice with impressive accuracy. "That'll be the Nightingale girl, then, the one who threw him over when her daddy had money." Mary kept weeding, saying nothing. "Now she's back, when he's got the ranch running good." Florence shook her head. "Like I said, men are fools, but Edison's a good fool. At least, he'll see through her quick enough." "It's not my concern." "Isn't it?" Florence's knowing look made Mary flush. "Girl, I've got eyes. See how he watches you. See how you watch him when you think nobody's looking. I'm his employee, nothing more. Sure you are. Florence chuckled. Well, when you're done lying to yourself, remember this Edison Boone's the kind worth fighting for. Don't let some painted peacock waltz in and take what you're too scared to claim. She left as abruptly as she'd come, leaving Mary alone with churning thoughts. Through the kitchen window, she could see Edison and Martha in the front room. Martha was crying, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. Edison stood stiff, uncomfortable, trying to comfort her without getting too close. Mary turned back to her weeds. Not her business, not her place, not her... Miss Calloway. Sheriff Theodore Garvey stood at the garden gate, badge glinting in the sun. A good man, she'd heard, trying to bring law to a lawless place. Sheriff, Mr. Boone said you'd be coming. Is he in need to discuss the water situation? He's occupied at the moment, but I'll let him know you're here. Back through the kitchen, where her bread dough had risen beautifully, into the front room, where Martha was now clinging to Edison's arm. Excuse me, Sheriff Garvey's here about the water rights. Edison looked relieved at the interruption. Thank you, Martha. We'll have to continue this later. Sheriff's business can't wait. But Edison, later, firm but not unkind. He extricated himself, nodded to Mary, and went out to meet the sheriff. Martha turned to Mary, tears miraculously dry. You're sweet on him. I beg your pardon. Oh, don't play innocent. I see how you look at him, the hired help getting ideas above her station. Martha's pretty face turned sharp. I've known Edison since we were children. We have history, connection, breeding. What do you have a talent for biscuits? Mary's temper flared. I have work to do. The door's that way. How dare you? This is my kitchen. Mary stood straight, every inch of Missouri backbone showing. You're neither family nor guest here, so unless you'd like to explain to Edison why his bread burned while I entertained his visitor, I suggest you wait in the parlor. Martha gasped, but retreated. Mary returned to her dough, punching it down with perhaps excessive force. Through the window, she could see Edison and the sheriff in serious conversation, the sheriff pointing upstream, Edison shaking his head. Trouble coming. She could feel it like storm weather. By dinner, Martha had established herself in the main house like she'd never left. She appeared at the table in a fresh dress, having somehow procured hot water and privacy to refresh herself. The men stared. She was beautiful. Mary had to admit, beautiful in that polished way that didn't belong out here. Gentlemen, Edison said wearily, Miss Nightingale will be staying a few days while she arranges transportation back east. Back east, Martha's voice rose. But Edison, I thought... We'll discuss it later. He carved the roast with focused precision. The meal was awkward. Martha picked at her food, made delicate conversation about Richmond society, asked the men questions about their work that showed she had no real interest in the answers. The hands grew quieter and quieter, their usual rough jokes dying under her elegant presence. Mary served and cleared in silence, noticing how Martha never acknowledged her, never said thank you, acted as if the food appeared by magic. Only Roosevelt made a point of complimenting the meal, earning a grateful smile. Mighty fine cooking, Miss Mary, he said loudly. That roast tender as anything. Thank you, Rue. Martha's laugh tinkled false as brass. Rue, what a quaint nickname, like something from a children's story. The boy flushed red. Jefferson's face darkened. Roosevelt here's worth 10 Richmond dandies and, ma'am, he can ride, rope, and shoot better than most men twice his age. I'm sure he's very capable. Martha's tone suggested otherwise. Edison set down his fork. Martha, a word. They left together, her protests echoing down the hall. The men relaxed instantly. Which? Napoleon muttered. Napoleon, Jefferson warned. Well, she is, acting like we're servants, like Miss Mary's invisible. He turned to her. You're worth 50 of her. Miss Mary. Don't you pay her no mind. Language, Mary said automatically. But she was touched. More coffee? Anyone? They lingered over the meal, reluctant to leave the warm kitchen for the bunkhouse, where no doubt Martha's presence would be the night's main topic. Finally, they filtered out, each making a point of thanking Mary for dinner. Edison returned as she was washing dishes. He looked exhausted. I'm sorry about all that. No need to apologize. Your business is your own. She'll be gone tomorrow. I've arranged for Washington to drive her to town first thing. He picked up a dish towel, started drying despite her protest. I never thought she'd actually come west. When I wrote that letter 2 years ago, I was a different man. Foolish. We all have our foolish moments. Yes. He was quiet, methodical with the dishes. Martha sees what she wants to see, always has. She looks at this place and sees dust and isolation. I see home. What do you see when you look at the future? The question slipped out before Mary could stop it. Edison paused, hands still. I see the ranch thriving. Good water, good grass, good cattle. I see a place where a man can build something lasting, maybe a family someday. If. He glanced at her, then away. What do you see? Mary. She thought of John's ring, still in her pocket, of dreams that died with fever, of starting over in a kitchen that already felt more like home than anywhere since childhood. I see bread rising, she said softly. Coffee brewing at dawn. Hungry men fed and grateful. Simple things, but real. Not so simple. His voice was equally soft. Takes courage to start over, to trust again after loss. Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them, understanding. Possibility, patience. Then boots on the porch shattered the moment. Boss Washington burst in. Riders coming, maybe 6 or 7, from the north. Edison's face hardened. He set down the towel, checked the pistol at his hip. Could be nothing. Could be Carnegie's men. Mary, stay inside. But Mary followed to the porch, where the men were gathering. In the distance, dust rose against the setting sun. The riders came on steady, purposeful. That's Rockefeller, Jefferson said, squinting. Carnegie's foreman. This ain't a social call. The riders pulled up just outside the yard. John Rockefeller, a man with dead eyes and scarred hands, touched his hat mockingly. Evening, Boone, boys. State your business and move on, Edison said coldly. Mr. Carnegie wants to make you another offer. More than generous, considering. Answer's the same as last time. Boone's draw isn't for sale. Everything's for sale. For the right price. Rockefeller's gaze swept the ranch, lingered on Mary. Nice improvements you're making. Be a shame if something happened to them. Is that a threat? Just an observation. Dry season coming, accidents happen, fires start, cattle wander. He smiled, ugly and knowing. Mister, Carnegie's a patient man, but patience has limits. Get off my land. Your land, for now. Rockefeller wheeled his horse. Think about it. Boone. Carnegie gets what he wants, one way or another. They rode off in a cloud of dust and implied violence. The men stood tense until the riders disappeared over the rise. Double the night watches. Edison ordered. Jefferson, check the fences tomorrow. Washington, ride to the Barton place. Warn Florence. If Carnegie's making moves, we all need to know. Martha appeared in the doorway, pretty face, petulant. Edison, what's happening? Who are those terrible men? The reason you're leaving tomorrow, he said shortly. This isn't Richmond. Martha, this is real, and it's dangerous, and it's no place for you. She gasped, fled inside. Edison turned to Mary. "I meant what I said. Stay inside after dark. Lock your door. These men—" "I understand." She did. The frontier had its own rules, and they were written in blood as often as ink. That night, Mary lay awake listening to the ranch sounds, horses shifting, nightbirds calling, the creak of a guard walking the perimeter. Through her small window, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. In her pocket, John's ring sat heavy with the past, but here in the present, bread dough rose in its bowl for tomorrow's baking. Coffee beans waited to be ground at dawn, somewhere in the house. Edison kept watch, protecting what was his. What was theirs? Maybe, given time, given courage, given the chance to see what might grow in this hard, beautiful land. Her kitchen waited in darkness for morning light. And Mary Calloway, who had been Mary Lincoln, who had been so many things to survive, finally felt the first stirrings of home. The young mare bucked again, sending Edison sprawling into the corral fence with a sickening crunch. Mary dropped the basket of eggs she'd been gathering and ran, her skirts catching on the gate as she scrambled through. "Don't move!" She was at his side before the dust settled, her hands already checking for obvious breaks. Edison lay still, face pale beneath the tan, his right shoulder sitting at an angle that made her stomach turn. "Just winded," he managed through gritted teeth. "Liar." Mary's fingers found the displacement. "Your shoulder's out. Roosevelt, get the men." "I'm fine." Edison tried to sit up, gasped, and fell back. "You're stubborn is what you are." Fear sharpened her voice. "That mare's been trouble since you brought her in. She's young, scared." Even in pain, he defended the animal. "Just needs patience. What she needs is a firmer hand, and what you need is that shoulder set before it swells." Mary looked up as the men came running. "Jefferson, Napoleon helped me get him to the house." Gently. They carried him to the kitchen, the closest flat surface. Mary's mind raced through memories, her father teaching her this, his hands guiding hers. "Before I lost everything and became respectable, I was a doctor's daughter," she said to their questioning looks. "Roosevelt, get the whiskey. Washington, I need clean cloth for a sling." "Mary, I don't think—" Edison started. "Hush." She was already positioning herself. "This is going to hurt. Jefferson, hold him steady." She'd done this before, but never on someone who made her hands shake for reasons beyond medical concern. Taking a breath, she gripped his arm, felt for the right angle, and pulled with a firm, smooth motion. The joint slipped back with an audible pop. Edison's curse would have scandalized a sailor, but the relief on his face was immediate. Better, Mary began fashioning a sling from Washington's cloth. "Better." His good hand caught hers. Where did a respectable woman learn that? "My father." She kept her voice light, focusing on the knots. "Dr. Samuel Clemens, back in Hannibal, before he took to drinking and gambling. Before we lost everything, before I became someone else entirely." The kitchen was quiet except for her work. The men exchanged glances. This was more than their cook had revealed in weeks. "We all got histories," Jefferson said finally. "What matters is who you are now." "And who's that?" Mary secured the sling, stepped back. "The woman who just saved the boss from a week of misery." Napoleon grinned. "Though I bet Doc Baker in town would have charged a lot more and been a lot less gentle about it." Edison tested the sling carefully. "Thank you, though I could have managed." "You could have made it worse is what you could have done." Mary's fear was cooling into anger. "What were you thinking? Getting on that mare alone?" "I was thinking she needed work, and the men were busy with—" "You were thinking you're invincible." She turned away, began cleaning up. "You're not. None of us are. This land doesn't forgive carelessness." The room emptied quietly, the men sensing a conversation that didn't need witnesses. Edison remained seated at the table, watching her work with his good arm cradled against his chest. "You're angry," I'm practical. She wrung out a cloth with unnecessary force. This ranch needs you functional. The men need you. The fight with Carnegie needs you whole and thinking clearly, not taking foolish risks with half-broken horses. And you, his voice was soft. What do you need, Mary? She stilled, hands in the wash water. I need people to stop leaving, stop dying, stop breaking themselves on this hard ground like it's something to prove. Mary, he was behind her now, close enough she could feel his warmth. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. My father thought he'd live forever, thought there'd always be time to fix things, make things right. Then one night, a patient's husband didn't like his diagnosis. One knife, one moment, and everything changed. She hadn't meant to say that, hadn't told anyone about that night, the blood on the surgery floor, the way her father's eyes went empty while she pressed uselessly on the wound. Edison's good hand touched her shoulder, turned her gently. I'm sorry for your loss, for scaring you today. I wasn't scared, but her voice broke on the lie. I was. He admitted it simply. When I hit that fence, first thing I thought wasn't about the ranch or the mare or even the pain. It was that I'd promised to teach you to ride properly. And how could I do that with a ruined shoulder? Mary laughed despite herself, a watery sound. That's what worried you. Among other things. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You said you need people to stop leaving. I need something too. What's that? I need someone to stay. Someone who sees this place as home, not just a way station. Someone who looks at the future and sees possibility, not just survival. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly. The air charged like before a storm. Mary was acutely aware of his hand still on her shoulder, of how easy it would be to lean into his strength. The fall festival's next week, Edison said quietly. Would you come with me, not as the cook, not as an employee, as what? As the woman I'd like to court properly, if she'll have me. Mary's breath caught. Edison, there are things you don't know. My past. We all have pasts. You just set my shoulder with skills learned from yours. That's not something to hide from. It's not just that. She pulled away, needing distance to think. My husband, what I told you about being widowed. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share. But I need to. She faced him, gathering courage. John and I, we were never legally married. Couldn't afford it. Kept saying we'd do it proper when we struck it rich in California. Then the fever took him, and I had his name and his ring but no papers to prove anything. So I became a widow because it was easier than explaining, more respectable than the truth. Edison was quiet, processing. Does it matter? He said finally. Legal or not, you loved him. You mourned him. You're starting over. That's real enough for me. You don't think less of me. I think you're the strongest woman I've met. And I think... He paused, choosing words carefully. I think John was a lucky man to have your love. However, briefly, I'd be luckier still to earn it. However long it took. Before Mary could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Washington burst through the door. Boss trouble at the Barton place. Riders hit them last night, barns burned. Cattle scattered. Edison's face hardened. Anyone hurt? Florence's boy took a bullet in the leg. She's spitting mad and loaded for bear. Saddle the horses, we're riding out. Edison started for the door. Stopped, turned back to Mary. That conversation about the festival? Can wait, Mary finished. Go, be careful, please. He touched her cheek briefly, then was gone. Mary stood in the suddenly empty kitchen, heart racing for entirely different reasons than medicine and emergency. The hours crawled. Mary threw herself into work bread. Pie. Enough food to feed an army because keeping busy was better than thinking. Roosevelt stayed behind to help, his young face serious. They'll be fine, he said, peeling potatoes with mechanical precision. Boss knows what he's doing. I know. But knowing didn't stop the worry. That mare, Roosevelt ventured. The one that threw him. She's not mean, just scared. Came from a bad place. Previous owner used spurs too much. Whipped too often. Why tell me this? Because the boss sees something in her worth saving, like he does with all of us. The boy's ears reddened. I was nobody before here. Run away from an orphanage, stealing to eat. He caught me trying to take one of his horses. Could have shot me. Could have had me arrested. Instead, he offered me work. Mary's hands stilled on the dough. I didn't know. Most folks don't. That's not his way. But Washington was a drunken town until Edison dried him out. The Pike brothers lost their own ranch to drought, were heading for California with nothing when Edison hired them. Even Sherman, he don't talk about it. But Edison got him out of some trouble with the law back in Texas. He collects strays, Mary said softly. He collects people worth collecting. Roosevelt met her eyes. Including a cook who sets shoulders like a doctor and makes biscuits like an angel. The afternoon wore on. Mary and Roosevelt worked in companionable silence, the kitchen filling with good smells, but underneath ran a current of tension, every distant sound making them look up, hoping for returning riders. Finally, as the sun touched the horizon, they heard horses. Mary ran to the porch, Roosevelt close behind. The men rode in slowly. Edison at the lead, all accounted for but grim-faced. How's Florence? Mary asked as Edison dismounted carefully, favoring his shoulder. Mad as a wet cat, but holding on. Doc Baker's with her boy. He'll pull through. He accepted the cup of water she offered. But this changes things. Carnegie's not waiting anymore. He's pushing. What will you do? What we have to... Jefferson's riding to the county seat tomorrow. File formal complaints. Washington's heading to Fort Dodge. See if the marshal there will take interest. And we're organizing the smaller ranchers. If Carnegie wants a fight, he'll get one. That evening's meal was subdued despite the abundance of food. The men ate steadily, fueling up for whatever came next. Plans were made, watches set, strategies discussed. But later, as Mary cleaned up and the ranch settled into guarded sleep, Edison appeared in the kitchen doorway. How's the shoulder? She asked. Sore but functional, thanks to you. He watched her work. I meant what I said earlier, about the festival, about everything. Mary dried her hand slowly. I know, and I want to say yes. But Edison, this trouble with Carnegie, will be there whether you go to a dance with me or not. He stepped closer. Mary, I spent 2 years convinced I'd never want to risk caring for someone again. Then you walked into my life with your pride and your hurt and your biscuits. And suddenly, the risk didn't seem so frightening anymore. I'm frightened, she admitted. Not of Carnegie or his men, of hoping, of building something just to watch it burn. Then we'll build with stone. Edison said simply, we'll build careful and strong, and if it burns anyway, we'll build again. That's what people do out here. We endure. Mary thought of her father's hands teaching her to heal, of John's ring still carried but weighing less each day, of this kitchen that had become hers in ways that went beyond employment. Ask me again, she said softly, about the festival. Ask me properly. Edison's smile was like sunrise. Miss Mary Calloway, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to the fall festival as my guest, my companion, and perhaps, if I'm very fortunate, as something more... Yes, the word came easier than she'd expected. Yes, Edison Boone, I'll go with you. He caught her hand, raised it to his lips in a gesture both courtly and tender. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Mary warned, but she was smiling. I haven't danced in years. You may regret this when I step on your feet. Never. His certainty warmed her more than the stove. Though perhaps we should practice. When my shoulder's better. When your shoulder's better, she agreed. And when there aren't men with guns threatening everything you've built, everything we're building, he corrected. This place, this life, it's not just mine anymore. Mary, hasn't been since the day you made that first proper meal and the men remembered what home tasted like. Outside, a guard called the all clear. The ranch slept fitfully, waiting for tomorrow's troubles. But in the kitchen, in the lamplight, two people who'd learned caution the hard way took the first careful steps toward something that might, with luck and courage, be called love. I should go, Edison said eventually. Early morning. Mary agreed, but neither moved. That mare, Edison said suddenly. The one that threw me. Would you like to meet her properly when things calm down? I could teach you to ride. Start with something gentle. Work up to her. I'd like that. Mary thought of her trembling words that would come later, about first rides and belonging. But for now, this was enough, this promise of tomorrows, of skills shared and trust built slow. Edison squeezed her hand once more, then left. Mary stood in her kitchen, their kitchen, and felt the shape of the future shifting, settling into new patterns. Outside, danger lurked. Carnegie and his men, drought and fire, all the hazards of the frontier. But inside, bread dough rose for tomorrow. Coffee beans waited for dawn. And a woman who'd lost everything found that perhaps, just perhaps, she was ready to gain something new. The festival was a week away. By then, who knew what storms would have passed but Mary Calloway, who was learning to be herself again, thought maybe she'd dance anyway, even if her feet were unsure, even if the world was uncertain. Because Edison was right out here, people endured, and sometimes, if they were very lucky, they did more than endure. Sometimes they lived. The fence wire sang a discordant note when Jefferson cut it, the tension releasing with a snap that echoed across the dawn-quiet valley. 3 sections down, 20 yards of Boone's draw boundary destroyed overnight. Same as the Bartlett place, Napoleon said grimly, examining the cuts. Clean, professional, not some drunk cowboys letting off steam. Edison crouched by the trampled grass, reading signs. Shot horses, at least 6, came from the north, left heading east. He stood, jaw tight. They're getting bolder, or more desperate. Sheriff Theodore Garvey offered, having arrived at first light after Mary sent Roosevelt to town. Carnegie's been spending heavy. Men like that don't like waiting for returns on investment. Mary stood by the wagon, having insisted on coming despite Edison's protests. The cut fence made her stomach churn, such a simple thing, wire and posts. But it represented so much more. Order against chaos. Ownership against theft. The fragile line between civilization and lawlessness. We'll need every hand to repair this, Washington calculated. 2 days, maybe 3. Days we don't have. Edison said, the cattle will drift, mix with Carnegie's herd. By the time we sort them out, he'll claim half as his own. Then we work through the night. Jefferson declared, I'll ride to town, get more wire. I'll help, Mary said. I can't string fence, but I can keep the men fed while they work. Edison turned to her, and she saw the war in his eyes, wanting to send her back to safety, knowing he needed every able person. There's an old line shack about a mile up, he said finally. We'll set up a base there. Can you manage cooking over an open fire? I've managed worse. The next hours blurred together in organized chaos. Mary transformed the abandoned line shack into a field kitchen while the men hauled supplies. By noon, she had coffee boiling, beans soaking, and cornbread baking in a Dutch oven nestled in coals. You're a wonder, Florence Barton declared, riding up with her own wagon full of supplies. Her son Benjamin, pale but mobile with his leg wound, drove while she rode shotgun literally, with a scattergun across her lap. Takes one to know one, Mary replied, grateful for the company. How's the boy? Tougher than he looks, like his father was. Florence's weathered face hardened. Carnegie's men made a mistake hitting us. I've got friends from here to Denver who remember what my late husband did for them. They're coming." Throughout the afternoon, riders appeared: the Morgans from Sawmill Creek, old Cornelius Vanderbilt from the Box 5, even the widow Churchill with her 3 grown sons. By evening, 30 people worked the fence line, united by shared threat. Mary kept them fed, moving between fire and wagon with mechanical efficiency. But her eyes tracked Edison constantly, noting how he favored his healing shoulder, how he positioned himself between the workers and the horizon where danger might appear. As stars emerged, she found him standing apart, studying the lengthening fence. "You need to eat," she said, pressing a plate into his hands. "In a minute." "Now, you're no good to anyone if you collapse." He accepted the food but barely tasted it, his mind clearly elsewhere. This is what he wants. Keep us busy defending, wearing us down, spending resources we can't spare. "But it's also bringing people together," Mary pointed out. "Look at them neighbors who barely spoke or working side by side." "Until Carnegie offers them enough to turn." The bitterness in his voice surprised her. "Money talks louder than neighborliness out here." "You don't believe that." "Don't I?" He set down the untouched plate. "My father believed in community, helped everyone, gave credit when drought hit, shared water in dry years. When he died, half those grateful neighbors tried to buy our land cheap from the grieving widow and her boys." Mary touched his good arm. "But you held on. You're still here." "Stubborn, my mother called it. Strong, I call it." She felt him relax slightly under her touch. These people aren't here for old debts or favors. They're here because Carnegie threatens what they've built too. Stand together or fall separately. Roosevelt's shout interrupted them. "Riders coming from town." Tension rippled through the camp, hands moving to weapons. But as the riders drew closer, Edison relaxed. "It's Victoria," he said, surprise coloring his voice. Victoria Woodhull rode like a man, split skirt and confident seat, leading a group of townspeople. Mary recognized the doctor, the minister, even Hull from the general store. "Heard you were having a fence party," Victoria called out, dismounting with easy grace. "Thought you could use more hands." "This isn't your fight," Edison said carefully. "Isn't it?" Victoria's eyes flashed. "Carnegie's been squeezing the town too. Higher prices at his company store, lower wages at his stockyard. He wants to own everything from here to the mountains." Behind her, the townspeople nodded agreement. Doc Baker stepped forward. "Your father delivered my Sarah when every other doctor said she wouldn't make it. I haven't forgotten." One by one, they shared stories, debts of kindness, memories of mutual aid, the web of connection that made community possible in this harsh land. Mary watched Edison's face soften, saw him remember why his father had believed in neighbors. They worked through the night, lanterns dotting the fence line like fallen stars. Mary kept coffee flowing, aided by Florence and Victoria. The women had commandeered the line shack, creating an efficient system that kept workers fed in shifts. "You're good at this," Victoria observed, watching Mary orchestrate the feeding of 40 people. "I've had practice. Not just the cooking, the managing, the seeing what needs doing and making it happen." Victoria's shrewd eyes studied her. "Edison's lucky to have found you." "I work for him, nothing more." "Horse feathers," Florence snorted. "That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you watch him like he's water in the desert." Mary flushed but didn't deny it. "It's complicated. Best things usually are." Victoria said, "But don't wait too long to uncomplicate it. Life out here is uncertain. Grab happiness when you can." Near dawn, as the last section of fence took shape, exhaustion weighed on everyone. Mary was banking the fire when she heard it hoofbeats, fast and hard, from the wrong direction. "Indians!" someone shouted, but Edison held up a hand. "No, horses are shod. That's—" The lead rider burst into the lantern light, and Mary's blood chilled. Wade Rockefeller, Carnegie's foreman, led 20 men, all armed, their faces hard with purpose. "Well, well," Rockefeller drawled, taking in the gathered crowd. "Regular barn raising, isn't it, except you're building on disputed land?" "Nothing disputed about it." Edison stepped forward, hand near his gun. "This is Boone land, registered and legal." "Funny thing about papers." Rockefeller produced a document. "They can change. Mr. Carnegie filed a claim on this section yesterday. Prior use, based on his cattle grazing here. His cattle were here because you cut our fence." "Prove it." Rockefeller's smile was cold. "Course, we could settle this friendly like Mr. Carnegie's still willing to buy. Good price for the whole spread. Enough for you to start over somewhere else." "Not selling." "Then you're trespassing. All of you." Rockefeller's hand moved toward his gun. "And we're within rights to—" "To what?" Sheriff Garvey stepped into view, badge glinting. "Threaten lawful citizens? I think not." "Sheriff," Rockefeller nodded mockingly. "Didn't expect to see you out here. Thought you stayed in town where it's safe." "I go where I'm needed, and right now, I'm needed here. Keeping the peace." Garvey's voice carried authority despite the numbers against him. "You've made your claim. Let the court settle it. Until then, these people have right to be here." "Courts," Rockefeller spat, "take months. Meanwhile, cattle need water, need grass. Man's got to protect his interests. And the law protects everyone's interests." Garvey countered. "That's why we have it." The standoff stretched taut. Mary found herself holding her breath, acutely aware of how many guns were present, how easily this could explode. She saw Roosevelt ease toward the wagon where rifles lay hidden, saw Florence's hand on her shotgun, saw Edison coiled like a spring, ready for whatever came. Then, unexpected, came singing, rough, off-key, but growing stronger as voices joined in. The minister had started it, Amazing Grace, simple and powerful in the pre-dawn darkness. One by one. The fence builders took it up, not as worship but as defiance, as unity, as a declaration that they were more than scattered individuals. Rockefeller's men shifted uneasily. Hard to shoot people singing hymns, even for men used to violence. "This isn't over," Rockefeller snarled, wheeling his horse. "You can't watch every fence, every night, and Carnegie's got deeper pockets than all of you combined." They thundered away, leaving dust and tension in their wake. The singing died, replaced by shaky laughter and relief. "Well," Victoria said dryly, "that was interesting." Edison was already moving, checking on people, assessing damage. He found Mary by the supply wagon, her hands trembling as she reorganized already organized supplies. "You all right?" "Fine, I'm fine." But her voice shook. He covered her hands with his, stilling their nervous movement. "You were brave." "I was terrified." "Same thing, sometimes." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "Mary, I need to tell you something. About the festival. If you're about to say it's too dangerous." "No, I was going to say we should go armed." His wry smile surprised her into laughing. "But also, I want you to know what you're risking. Being seen with me, publicly. As more than my cook, it makes you a target. Carnegie's not above using whatever leverage he can find." Mary thought of John, of all the careful plans that came to nothing, of her father, whose caution hadn't saved him, of playing safe and ending up with empty hands anyway. "I'm already a target," she said firmly. "I work for you, live on your land. If Carnegie wants to hurt you through me, he doesn't need a dance to do it." "But, Edison Boone, are you trying to talk me out of going to the festival with you?" "No, I want you to be sure." Mary looked around at the fence, strong and new in the growing light, at the people, exhausted but victorious, gathering their tools, at this man who'd given her a chance when she had nothing. who saw her as more than her past or her position. "I've been unsure my whole life," she said. "Unsure if there'd be food tomorrow, if the rent would be paid, if anyone would stay. I'm tired of unsure." She turned her hands in his, gripping tight. "I'm saying yes, to the dance, to the risk, to whatever comes. Don't make me say it twice." His kiss was answer enough, quick and fierce and full of promise. There in the morning light with half the county as witness. Cheers and catcalls rose from the workers, but Mary didn't care. Let them see. Let Carnegie see. Let the whole territory know that Mary Calloway had chosen her ground and would defend it. When they broke apart, Edison's eyes held something that looked like wonder. "First time I saw you, standing outside Hull's store. Proud as a queen even in defeat, I knew you were trouble. Good trouble, I hope. The best kind." Jefferson's cough interrupted them. "Boss, not to intrude, but we got company coming. Again." But this time, the rider was alone. A thin man in a dusty suit, hunched over his saddle like he'd ridden all night. As he drew closer, Mary recognized him. "Ulysses," Edison said, surprised. "What brings Carnegie's bookkeeper out here?" "Ulysses S." Morse looked terrified, but determined. "Need to talk to you. Mr. Boone, private-like. Got information you need to hear." Edison and Garvey exchanged glances. "All right, Mary, could you get this man some coffee? He looks about to fall over." In the line shack, Morse clutched the tin cup like a lifeline. "I've been keeping Carnegie's books for 2 years. Seen things, done things I ain't proud of. But what he's planning now." "Go on," Garvey prompted. "It ain't just about water rights. There's a railroad coming through, Northern Pacific. Carnegie's got inside information, knows exactly where it'll run." Morse pulled out a creased map. "Right through Boone's Draw. Your land's worth 10 times what he's offering, maybe more once those tracks are laid." Edison studied the map, face darkening. "How long have you known?" "Month, maybe 2, but that ain't the worst part." Morse's hands shook. "He's got a judge in Denver ready to rule on those water rights. Paid for, signed and sealed. You go to court, you'll lose, no matter what papers you got." "Why tell us?" Mary asked gently. "Because I got a daughter, 13 years old, Carnegie." He noticed her, started making comments, suggestions. Morse's face crumpled. "I ain't much, but I'm her father. Can't let her pay for my cowardice." "We'll protect you," Edison said immediately. "Both of you." "Can't protect us from him. He's got reach from here to Chicago." Morse stood. "I'm taking my girl and running. Tonight. Just wanted someone to know the truth before I went." "Wait," Garvey said. "Your testimony could get me killed. No offense, Sheriff, but you can't guard me every minute." Morse moved to the door. "Fight him if you want, but know what you're up against. Man like Carnegie don't play by rules the rest of us follow." He was gone before they could argue, spurring his tired horse toward whatever safety distance might provide. Edison stared at the map, the promised railroad line drawn in red like a wound across his land. "Changes everything." "Does it?" Mary asked. "You're still not selling." "No, but now I know why he wants it so bad." He looked at Garvey. "That judge in Denver any way to prove Morse was telling truth? Maybe. I got a friend in the marshal's office Mike could look into it. But that takes time. Time Carnegie won't give us." Edison rolled up the map. "We need to be smart. Use what we know without revealing how we know it." Outside, the fence builders were packing up. Job done for now. The new wire gleamed in the morning sun, straight and strong, but Mary wondered how long it would last against an enemy with judges in his pocket and railroads in his future. "The festival's in 3 days," Edison said quietly. "After what Morse said, I'd understand if you changed your mind." Mary looked at him, this good man trying to do right in a world that rewarded wrong. Thought of all the times she'd run, all the chances she'd missed being afraid. "I told you," she said firmly. "I'm tired of unsure. Besides, She managed a smile. I've been practicing my dancing with Roosevelt. Be ashamed to waste all that stepped-on feet. Roosevelt's been teaching you to dance. Don't look so jealous. He's half in love with the minister's daughter. Just helped me remember the steps. She touched Edison's face, felt the stubble of a sleepless night. I'm going to that festival with you. Edison Boone, Carnegie and his railroads be damned. Have I mentioned you're magnificent? Not today. Terrible oversight. You're magnificent. Mary Calloway? The sun was fully up now, painting the repaired fence gold behind them. Florence called out that breakfast was ready. She'd taken over Mary's cooking duties with typical efficiency. The smell of bacon and coffee drew the tired workers like a magnet. Come on, Mary said, tugging Edison toward the food. Magnificent or not, I'm starved. They ate among friends and neighbors, the shared meal cementing bonds forged in shared labor. Stories were told, plans made, promises of mutual aid exchanged. Carnegie might have money and influence, but this was something money couldn't buy. Later, riding back to Boone's draw in the wagon, Mary dozed against Edison's good shoulder. She woke when they hit a rut, finding his arm around her, holding her steady. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be. You earned the rest. He guided the horses one-handed, seemingly content to let her use him as a pillow. Mary, what Morse said about protecting his daughter I want you to know. If Carnegie tries anything like that with you, you'll call him out at high noon. She tried for lightness, but heard his genuine concern. I'm not 13. Edison. I've faced worse than Alexander Carnegie. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes me prepared. She sat up, needing him to understand. I won't be scared off by threats or intimidation. This is my home now. Our home, worth fighting for. Edison pulled the wagon to a stop, there on the empty road with the ranch still a mile distant. Our home. If you'll have me, not just as cook or whatever we're calling this thing between us, but as partner. In all of it, the work, the worry, the fighting to keep what's ours. Mary Calloway, are you proposing to me? Heat flooded her cheeks. No, I mean, not exactly. I just meant... He kissed her quiet, thorough and tender in the morning light. When he pulled back, his eyes held that wonder again. Yes, he said simply. Yes. To partnership, to sharing the load, to building something together that neither of us could manage alone. He touched her face. I'm not proposing either. Not yet. Want to do that proper when the time comes. But this, what you're offering, sharing the weight of it all, yes, absolutely yes. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, hands linked on the wagon seat. The ranch came into view, smoke rising from the kitchen chimney where someone, probably Roosevelt, was attempting breakfast. Oh no, Mary said, suddenly urgent. If he's tried to make biscuits again. Edison laughed, rich and full. Better hurry then, save us all from Roosevelt's cooking. They rolled into the yard to find half the men standing outside the kitchen looking mournful. Through the window, smoke was visible. Don't say it. Roosevelt emerged, face smudged with soot. I followed your recipe exactly. Did you check the oven temperature? The oven has temperatures. Mary hurried inside to salvage what she could, Edison's laughter following her. Despite everything, cut fences, railroad threats, corrupt judges, life went on. Meals needed cooking, men needed feeding, days needed living. She opened windows to clear the smoke, assessed the damage not as bad as feared, and set about making things right. Through the kitchen window, she could see Edison organizing the day's work, his shoulder clearly better, his voice carrying easy authority. 3 days until the festival. 3 days to pretend the world was normal, that a woman could dance with a man without calculating the cost an enemy's made. 3 days to practice steps with Roosevelt, press her good dress, pretend her hands didn't shake when she thought of being so public with her feelings. But as Mary worked, humming under her breath, She found the fear less than the anticipation. Whatever came after, she'd have that night. Music and laughter and Edison's arms around her. There for all to see. Carnegie could threaten. Judges could be bought. Railroads could divide the land like scars. But first, she would dance. The morning bustled on around her, full of purpose and possibility. Mary rolled out fresh biscuit dough, properly this time, and thought about partnerships and promises and the price of staying put in a world that wanted you to run. High price, maybe. But looking out at this place, she'd claimed kitchen and ranch and man and all. Mary thought it might just be worth paying. The first gunshot cracked through the midnight air like thunder, jerking Mary from uneasy sleep. The second had her reaching for the rifle Edison had insisted she keep by her bed. By the third, she could hear men shouting, boots pounding across the yard. "Stay inside," Edison's voice, commanding through her window as he ran past. But Mary was already pulling on her wrapper, checking the rifle's load. She'd stayed inside too many times in her life while others fought her battles. The kitchen door burst open. Roosevelt stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Miss Mary, they came through the back pasture, dozen men, maybe more. They're trying to burn the barn." "Where's Edison?" "Fighting them off with Jefferson and the others. Napoleon's down, took a bullet to the shoulder." The boy swayed, and Mary caught him, easing him into a chair. "Head wounds bleed fierce, but aren't always serious," she said, her father's training taking over. "Hold this against it." She pressed a clean cloth to his forehead, then began gathering supplies, bandages, whiskey for cleaning wounds, her father's old medical bag she'd never been able to part with. Another volley of gunfire. Closer now. Through the window. Mary could see orange flames licking at the barn's corner. Her heart clenched. The horses, the winter feed, everything they needed to survive. "Can you stand?" she asked Roosevelt. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. We're going to the pump. That barn doesn't burn tonight." They slipped out the back, keeping low. The night was chaos, muzzle flashes in the darkness, men's shouts, the terrified screaming of horses. Mary could make out Edison near the corral, rifles steady as he and Jefferson held position behind water barrels. "The bucket line," Mary hissed to Roosevelt. "Like we practiced after the Barton fire." They'd drilled it, all of them. Edison insisting everyone know what to do if flames threatened. Now Mary blessed his foresight as she and Roosevelt began the rhythm pump. Fill, pass. Other shapes joined them, Sherman. Blood on his arm but mobile. Washington covering them with steady fire. "That's it," Mary shouted as water hit flames. "Keep it coming." The fire hissed and fought but began to yield. Behind them, the gunfight raged. Mary caught glimpses between bucket passes, Edison moving position, always placing himself between the attackers and his people. Carnegie's men trying to flank, being driven back. Then Wade Tolliver emerged from shadow, gun aimed at Edison's back. "Edison!" Mary's scream carried over the noise. Edison spun, but Tolliver was already too close, finger tightening on the trigger. Without thinking, Mary grabbed the nearest bucket full of water and hurled it. The heavy wooden container caught Tolliver square in the face. He staggered, shot going wild, giving Edison time to bring his rifle around. The two men faced each other in the firelight. Tolliver, blood streaming from his broken nose. Edison, steady as granite. "You were one of us," Edison said quietly, voice carrying despite the chaos. "Ate at our table, shared our work. Carnegie pays better." Tolliver snarled. "And he doesn't make a man sleep in a bunkhouse like a common hand." "You were never common," Edison replied, "just weak." Tolliver raised his gun again, but Sheriff Garvey's voice cut through the night. "Drop it! Tolliver, you're surrounded!" And Garvey had arrived with a posse townsmen, neighboring ranchers, even Hull from the general store, all armed and positioned. Carnegie's men, caught between the ranch defenders and the reinforcements, began throwing down weapons. Tolliver hesitated, calculating odds. Then his shoulders slumped. The gun fell from nerveless fingers. "On your knees," Garvey ordered. "All of you. Hands where I can see them." The barn fire was out, leaving charred boards but no real damage. Mary found herself standing in the muddy yard, bucket still gripped like a weapon, watching Carnegie's men being rounded up. Her wrapper was soaked, her hair wild, her bare feet cold in the mud. "Mary," Edison was there, pulling her against him, heedless of watching eyes. "When I saw you out here, in the middle of the gunfire, you needed help. I needed you safe." "Same thing." She pulled back to examine him, finding powder burns and scratches but no serious wounds. "Napoleon, Doc Baker's with him. Shoulder wound, but clean. He'll mend." His hands framed her face. "You threw a bucket at an armed man." "I threw a bucket at a snake," she corrected. "There's a difference." Despite everything, he laughed. "Remind me never to make you angry when you're near heavy objects." Boss Jefferson approached, supporting Napoleon, who was pale but grinning. "Got a count. 14 of Carnegie's men, including Tolliver. 2 of ours wounded, but nothing fatal. The horses, all safe, thanks to Miss Mary's quick thinking with the water." Mary began to shake as the danger passed, adrenaline giving way to reaction. Edison's arms tightened around her. "Let's get everyone inside," he said. "Sheriff, you'll need statements." "In the morning," Garvey said, understanding in his weathered face. "These boys aren't going anywhere tonight." The kitchen became a makeshift hospital. Mary cleaned and bandaged wounds with steady hands, her father's voice in her memory guiding her. Roosevelt's cut needed stitches. She did them neat and small, talking him through the pain. Napoleon's shoulder was indeed clean, the bullet passing through muscle without hitting bone. "You're wasted as a cook," Doc Baker observed, watching her work. "Got real healing hands." "Cooking feeds the body, doctoring mends it," Mary replied. "Both have their place." Through it all, she was aware of Edison watching her, something deep and private in his eyes. When the last wound was tended, the last man sent to rest, they found themselves alone in the kitchen as dawn pearled the horizon. "We should talk about what happened," Edison said. "Carnegie attacked, we defended. What else is there? Tolliver was aiming for my back. If you hadn't warned me, hadn't stopped him. But I did." Mary began cleaning up, needing the familiar work. "That's what partners do." Edison caught her hands, stilling them. "This is what I was afraid of. You, in danger because of me." "I was in danger the moment Carnegie decided he wanted this land. We all were." She turned her hands in his, gripping tight. "But we're also together. That means something." "It means everything." He lifted their joined hands, kissed her knuckles. "When I saw you with that bucket, fierce as any warrior, fierce I was terrified. And still you acted, still you stood with us." His voice went rough. "I love you, Mary Calloway, completely, absolutely, with every breath in my body." The words hung between them, profound in their simplicity. Mary's eyes filled. She stopped, overwhelmed. How to tell him what he'd given her? Not just safety or purpose, but the chance to be herself fully. The cook and the doctor's daughter, the proper lady and the woman who threw buckets at villains, all of her, accepted and valued. "You don't have to say it back," Edison said quickly. "I know it soon. Know you've been hurt before." "I love you too." The words came easier than she'd expected, true as sunrise. "I love your stubbornness and your kindness. I love how you treat your men and how you defend what's yours. I love your terrible coffee and your beautiful dreams for this place." She touched his face, feeling stubble and exhaustion. "I love you, Edison Boone, and that terrifies me more than all Carnegie's gunmen." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, the kitchen was full of golden morning light. "The festival's tomorrow," Mary said, attempting lightness. "Think we'll shock everyone. showing up together after this. After you threw a bucket at Tolliver to save me, I think we're past shocking and into legend." He smiled, the expression transforming his tired face. "They'll probably write songs about it. The night Mary Calloway defeated outlaws with cookware." "Don't you dare." "Too late. I'm composing lyrics in my head already." A knock interrupted. Sherman stood in the doorway, grinning despite his bandaged arm. "Boss, Sheriff wants to talk to you. And Miss Mary. The boys wanted me to say thank you, for the doctoring and the bucket throwing both." They emerged to find the yard full of people. News had spread with prairie swiftness, bringing neighbors and townfolk to see the aftermath. Carnegie's men sat under guard, looking decidedly worse for wear. "Tolliver's talking." Garvey reported quietly, "Trying to save his own skin. Says Carnegie promised bonuses for burning us out. Bigger bonuses if anyone got hurt accidental-like in the process." "Will it be enough?" Edison asked. "With the judge Carnegie bought, maybe not. But Judge Harlan in the next county is honest as they come. I'm taking these boys there for trial." Garvey smiled grimly. "Carnegie made a mistake going this far. Attack at night, attempted arson. Assault with deadly weapons, that's not business dispute anymore. That's felony crime." Victoria Woodhull arrived with the breakfast wagon, having somehow organized the town women into a feeding brigade. Soon the yard smelled of coffee and bacon, the crowd taking on an oddly festive air. Nothing like surviving a gunfight to work up an appetite, Florence Barton observed, handing Mary a plate. "Eat. You look ready to fall over." "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. And you got a dance tomorrow night, assuming Edison doesn't get shot before then." Florence's eyes twinkled. "Whole town's talking about it. Mary Calloway and Edison Boone, officially courting. Some folks got bets on when he'll propose." "Florence." "What? It's entertainment. Lord knows we need it out here." She grew serious. "What you did last night, standing with them, that took courage." "It took a bucket." "Same thing, sometimes." Florence patted her shoulder. "You'll do, Mary Calloway. You'll more than do." The day passed in a blur of statements, repairs, and preparation. Carnegie's men were transported to the county seat under heavy guard. The barn damage was assessed minimal, thanks to the quick response. By afternoon, something like normal routine returned. But that evening, as Mary worked in the kitchen, she noticed unusual activity. The men kept coming and going, whispering among themselves, shooting her meaningful looks. "All right," she finally said to Roosevelt. "What's going on?" "Nothing, just wait here." He darted out. Minutes later, Edison appeared. He'd cleaned up, wearing his good shirt, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mary, would you come outside?" She followed. Suspicious. The yard had been transformed. Lanterns hung from posts, creating a circle of warm light. The men stood in a rough line, cleaned up and grinning. In the center, someone had laid boards to create a small dancing floor. "We figured," Edison said quietly. "After last night, you deserved a preview before tomorrow's festival, where everyone will be watching." Music started Napoleon with a fiddle, his wounded shoulder not stopping him. Sherman with a guitar. Even Doc Baker had stayed to play harmonica. Simple music, earnest rather than skilled, but perfect in its intention. "May I have this dance?" Edison asked formally. Mary's throat closed with emotion. These rough men, who'd fought beside her hours ago, had created this for her, for them. "Yes," she whispered. They moved into the lantern light, Edison's hand warm on her waist. The boards creaked under their feet. Around them, the men began to clap in rhythm, some humming along. "I'm not good at this," Edison warned. "Neither am I." But it didn't matter. They swayed together, finding their own rhythm. Mary was aware of everything, the night air cool on her skin, the scent of Edison's soap, the way his hand trembled slightly where it held hers. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For this. For the chance. For not dying last night when Tolliver—" Her voice broke. "Hey!" He stopped dancing, tilted her chin up. "I'm here. We're here. That's what matters." "I know. But when I saw him behind you, when I thought—" Tears came then. All the fear she'd pushed down during the fight. "I can't lose anyone else. Edison, I can't." "You won't. Not if I can help it." He held her close while she cried, there in front of everyone, past caring about appearances. "We're building something strong here. Mary, something that will last. Promise." "I promise to try, every day, with everything I've got." He smiled against her hair. "Besides, you've got a mean arm with a bucket. I'd be a fool to leave that kind of protection." She laughed wetly, pulling back to see his face. Around them, the music had gentled, the men giving them space while still maintaining the circle of community. "Dance with me more," she said. "Before I remember, I'm supposed to be proper." "You threw cookware at an armed outlaw," Edison reminded her, spinning her carefully. "I think proper went out the window." They danced until the lanterns burned low, until the men drifted away to leave them in privacy. Finally, as the moon rose full and bright, Edison walked her to her door. "Tomorrow," he said, "I want to show the whole county what I see when I look at you." "What's that?" "My future, my partner, the woman who saves me with buckets and biscuits both." He kissed her softly. "The woman I want to marry, when the time is right." Mary's heart stopped, stuttered, raced. "Edison." "Not a proposal," he said quickly. "Not yet, just a statement of intent. So you know where I stand." "I know where you stand," Mary said. "Right beside me, where you belong." They parted reluctantly, the promise of tomorrow's festival shimmering between them. Mary closed her door, leaned against it, heard his footsteps fade toward the main house. Through her window, she could see the makeshift dance floor, boards pale in the moonlight, the yard where they'd fought, the barn they'd saved, the land they'd claimed together. Tomorrow, she'd put on her best dress and dance in public with Edison Boone. Carnegie would hate it. The proper ladies might whisper. The whole county would watch and judge. But tonight, she'd danced in the lantern light with wounded men playing fiddle and a good man holding her close. She'd been exactly who she was, fighter and healer, cook and partner, all of it together. Tomorrow could bring what it would. Tonight, she was home. Mary readied for bed, movements automatic. In her pocket, John's ring sat quiet still there, still part of her story, but no longer the only story she had to tell. She placed it on the dresser, next to her father's medical bag and the new gloves Edison had bought her for the festival. Past, present, and future, all there on the simple wooden surface, all part of who she was becoming. Outside, one of the men called the all clear. The ranch settled into guarded sleep, and Mary Calloway, who'd thrown buckets and danced in lantern light, smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow, she would dance again, but tonight had been perfect. The window let in sounds of the night watch, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through grass. Familiar sounds now, home sounds. Mary closed her eyes, Edison's promise echoing in her mind. Asterisk, my future, my partner. Yes, she thought, yes to all of it. And slept, dreaming of music and light and a love worth fighting for. The drought announced itself with brass-colored dawns and air that tasted of dust. 3 weeks after the festival, 3 weeks of Carnegie lying low while his men faced trial, the creek began to shrink. First a trickle less, then exposed rocks that had been submerged since Edison's father's time. Mary stood at the pump, watching the water sputter and wheeze. It's lower today. I know. Edison's face was grim as he studied the creek bed. Jefferson rode the full length yesterday. We're down by half already, and no rain in sight. What about the cattle? We'll have to move them to the north pasture, closer to what water remains. He rubbed his jaw, calculating. If this keeps up, we'll need to think about selling some off before they get too thin. Carnegie will love that, Mary said bitterly. Probably dancing a jig right now. Probably. Edison's smile held no humor. Man's got the devil's own timing. As if summoned by his name, a rider appeared on the horizon. Not Carnegie himself, he rarely dirtied his own hands, but his new foreman, a slick-looking man named Jay Gould, who'd arrived from Chicago with credentials and cold eyes. Morning, Boone, Miss Calloway. Gould touched his hat mockingly. Noticed you're having some water troubles. State your business and move on, Edison said flatly. Just being neighborly, mister. Carnegie wanted me to remind you his offer still stands, even increased it, given your recent difficulties. Gould produced a paper. 50% more than before. Cash on the barrelhead. Mary saw Edison's knuckles whiten, but his voice stayed steady. Not selling. Pride's expensive in a drought, Gould observed. How long before your cattle start dying? Week 2, mister. Carnegie's got deep wells on his property. His herds are thriving. Good for him. Could be good for you, too. This drought's going to break some folks. Boone, question is whether you're smart enough to get out before it breaks you. After Gould left, Edison stood silent, staring at the shrinking creek. Mary touched his arm. We'll manage. We always do. Do we? The doubt in his voice scared her more than Gould's threats. Mary, maybe... Don't! She turned him to face her. Don't you dare say I should leave, or this is too hard, or any other noble nonsense. We're partners. Remember, in everything. His hand covered hers. In everything, he agreed. All right then, partner. What do we do? We get creative. By noon, Mary had called a meeting in the kitchen. Not just the ranch hands, but Florence Barton, Victoria Woodhull, and several other neighbors facing the same crisis. Traditional ways won't work, Mary announced, spreading out a map Edison had drawn of local water sources. But together, we might have options. What kind of options? Cornelius Vanderbilt asked skeptically. His Box 5 ranch was suffering worse than most. Pooling resources, sharing what we have. Mary pointed to the map. Look, Boone's Draw still has some water. The Barton place has that spring. Box 5 has the deep well. If we work together, rotate cattle between properties, we might all survive. Share water rights, someone scoffed. That's not how it's done. Then we change how it's done. Florence said firmly, unless you'd rather sell to Carnegie for pennies on the dollar. The room erupted in discussion, arguments, agreements, voices raised in hope and skepticism both. Through it all, Mary kept pushing, organizing, finding solutions. The women will handle the logistics, Victoria declared. Setting up schedules, organizing work crews. The men can argue about pride later right now. We need action. Within days, Mary's kitchen had become command central for what folks started calling the Dust Water Collective. Charts covered the walls showing water levels, cattle movements, work rotations. Women who'd barely spoken before worked side by side, managing resources with ruthless efficiency. You've started something, Edison said one evening, watching Mary update charts while Victoria and Florence planned the next day's water hauling. We've started something, Mary corrected. This was always here the willingness to help, to stand together. Just needed organizing. Like ingredients for a recipe, he said, understanding. All there, but needing the right hand to combine them. She smiled. Speaking of recipes, we're instituting communal meals. Saves resources, builds morale. Every family contributes what they can. Carnegie won't like it, United, we're harder to break. Then we'd better stay united. But unity was tested as the drought deepened. The creek dwindled to a muddy trickle. Tempers frayed. Some families, faced with Carnegie's ever-increasing offers, began to waver. The Fillmore place sold. Washington reported one scorching afternoon. Saw them loading wagons this morning. That's 3 this week, Jefferson said grimly. Can't blame them, but it makes things harder. Mary stood at the stove, stirring a pot of beans that would feed 20 people. Less water meant simpler meals, but she made them count. Good food was comfort, was hope, was reason to gather and remember they weren't alone. Miss Mary Roosevelt appeared, face troubled. There's something you should see. She followed him outside to where a small group of townspeople had gathered. Among them stood Clara Whitman, the banker's daughter, dressed too fine for the dust and heat. Miss Calloway? Clara's smile was sharp as glass. I thought you should know what people are saying in town. I rarely concern myself with gossip. Miss Whitman. Oh, but this concerns you directly. You see, Mr. Carnegie's been asking questions about your past, about whether you're really who you claim to be. Clara's eyes glittered with malice. Interesting what a little investigation can turn up. Mary's blood chilled, but she kept her face calm. And what did this investigation turn up? Oh, I wouldn't want to spread rumors, but questions about marriages and names and legitimacy, well, they do make people wonder about the propriety of certain arrangements. That's enough. Edison appeared, voice dangerous. Miss Whitman, you're on my land. I suggest you leave. Of course. Just thought Miss Calloway should know. Reputation is so important, especially for someone in her position. Clara's laugh tinkled false as tin. Good day. After she left, Mary stood frozen. The past she'd tried to leave behind, dragged into the open as a weapon. Mary? She's right. The words came out flat. I told you there were things. John and I never legally married. My name, my claimed widowhood, it's all built on a lie. Built on survival, Edison corrected firmly. And none of their business besides. But the damage was done. Within days, the whispers started. Some families began keeping their distance from the communal meals. A few women who'd worked closely with Mary found excuses to stay away. Hypocrites! Florence spat, slamming down a water bucket. Half of them have secrets that'd curl your hair, but they're quick enough to judge. It's what Carnegie wanted, Mary said quietly. Divide us, make us weak. Then don't let him win, Victoria urged. Fight back. Tell your truth before others twist it worse. That night, Mary made her decision. The next communal gathering, she stood before the assembled families, those who'd come despite the gossip. You've heard the rumors, she began, voice carrying clear. I won't deny them. John Lincoln and I lived as husband and wife without papers. When he died, I took his name because it was easier than explaining. If that makes me scandalous, so be it. The crowd stirred, but she pressed on. But here's what else is true. I've cooked your meals and tended your wounds. I've stood beside you against drought and Carnegie both. I've helped build something here, not alone, but with all of you. If my past makes that worthless, then we've already lost to the kind of thinking Carnegie represents. Silence stretched. Then Florence stood. I buried 2 husbands before I turned 30. The second one, we never bothered with papers either, didn't seem to matter with death breathing down our necks. Anybody want to judge me for it? One by one, others stood, sharing secrets, admitting failures, acknowledging the complicated truths that frontier life demanded. By evening's end, the gathering had become something deeper, a community bound not by perfection but by acceptance. That was brave, Edison said later, finding Mary alone by the creek bed. That was terrifying. Most brave things are. He took her hand. Change is nothing for me. You know that. I know. She leaned into his strength. But Carnegie will keep pushing. This was just the first attack. As if to underscore her words. Roosevelt came running. "Boss, the Barton Spring, it's been fouled. Somebody dumped dead animals upstream." They rowed out immediately, finding Florence standing over the contaminated water, face twisted with rage. "Happened overnight. Guard saw nothing." "Carnegie," Edison said flatly. "Can't prove it," Sheriff Garvey said, arriving with the doctor. "No witnesses, no evidence but suspicion." "He's trying to break us," Mary said, "one piece at a time." "Then we don't break." Florence declared, "Doc, what'll it take to clean this?" "Time we don't have," Doc Baker said honestly. "That water's poison now. Take weeks to flush clean, if we had water to flush with." The loss of the Barton Spring meant reorganizing everything. Mary worked through the night, redrawing charts, recalculating rations. They could make it work, but barely. No margin for error now. Dawn brought worse news. The Morgan family was packing up, and 2 other small ranchers had accepted Carnegie's offers. "Like rats fleeing a ship," someone muttered. "Like people trying to survive," Mary countered sharply. "Don't judge unless you've walked their road." But she felt the community fragmenting, fear and desperation eating at the bonds they'd built. That afternoon, she found Edison at the nearly dry creek, shoulders slumped. "Maybe they're right to leave," he said quietly. "Maybe I'm just too stubborn to see sense." "Maybe," Mary agreed, making him look up in surprise. "Or maybe you're stubborn enough to outlast Carnegie and this drought both. Maybe that's exactly what we need." I'm not going anywhere. Edison Boone, not while there's a drop of water left and a single cow standing. We built something here. I won't let it die without a fight. Even if we lose everything. I've lost everything before. Survived it. But I've never had something worth fighting for like this. She touched his face. Like you, like us. Like this place we're making together. He caught her hand, kissed her palm. Then we fight. Then we fight. The next days blurred together in a haze of work and worry. Water hauled in barrels, cattle moved constantly to find grazing, people working until they dropped. Mary's kitchen never closed, feeding whoever needed it, stretching supplies through sheer will. Then, unexpected hope, Ulysses Morse. Carnegie's former bookkeeper sent word through Victoria the railroad surveyor was coming earlier than expected. If they could prove their legal claims before Carnegie consolidated his power. "It's a chance," Garvey said, studying the message. "Slim, but real." "What do we need?" Edison asked. "Original deeds, water rights documentation, proof of continuous occupation." The sheriff rubbed his jaw. "And we need Carnegie to not know we know. If he gets wind of this, he'll move heaven and earth to stop us." Mary felt pieces clicking together in her mind. "Then we give him something else to worry about. A distraction." "What kind of distraction?" She smiled, the expression sharp enough to make Edison step back. "The kind that involves a community celebration. Very public, very visible. While Carnegie's watching us dance, you gentlemen can gather what's needed." "That's actually brilliant," Victoria said admiringly. "Hide important business behind a social event. Very strategic." Plans formed quickly. A barn dance. They'd call it Celebrating Survival, Community, Resilience. Everyone invited, including Carnegie's people. Keep your enemies closer, after all. "Can we pull it off?" Roosevelt asked. "I mean, with water so scarce and supplies low, we'll make it work," Mary said firmly. "Everyone contributes something, small portions, but enough. Music costs nothing but effort. Dancing takes only hope. And if Carnegie suspects, then we'd better make it the best dance this county's ever seen. Give him nothing to suspect." The night arrived faster than expected. The largest barn on Boone's Draw had been cleared. Lanterns hung, boards laid for dancing. Despite everything, drought, fear, uncertainty, People came, bringing food to share, instruments to play, determination to celebrate what remained. Mary wore her festival dress again, aware of the irony. Last time she'd worn it, the world had seemed full of possibility. Now, with the creek dry and the future uncertain, she dressed for battle disguised as a dance. "You're beautiful," Edison said, finding her making last-minute food arrangements. "I'm armed," she corrected, showing him the documents hidden in her basket. "Original water rights. Going back to your father. They'll go to Garvey when the time's right. My brilliant partner." He kissed her quickly. "Shall we give them a show?" The barn filled with neighbors and strangers both. Carnegie himself appeared, dressed too fine for the setting, accompanied by Gould and several hard-faced men. "Mr. Carnegie." Edison greeted him coolly. "Didn't expect to see you." "I never miss a chance to see how my future property celebrates," Carnegie replied, eyes scanning the crowd. "Touching. Really, like watching passengers dance on a sinking ship." Mary's hand on Edison's arm kept him from responding. "Mr. Carnegie," she said sweetly. "How kind of you to join us. I do hope you'll dance. We're quite proud of our little community gathering." Carnegie's eyes narrowed at her tone, but before he could respond, the music started. Napoleon's fiddle, joined by guitars and harmonicas, and even an accordion someone had treasured across the plains. "Shall we?" Edison offered his arm to Mary. They opened the dancing, aware of every eye on them. Mary had danced with Edison before, but this was different. This was performance and declaration and distraction all at once. Garvey slipped out. Edison murmured as they turned. "Jefferson, too." "Good. Keep smiling. Clara Whitman's watching like a hawk." They danced, and others joined. And for a moment the barn held something magical. Despite drought and fear, despite Carnegie's presence, people chose joy, chose each other, chose to stand or dance together. "Look at them," Edison said softly, still hoping. "Still fighting," Mary corrected. "Same thing, maybe." Carnegie made his move during the third dance, approaching with Clara Whitman on his arm. "Mind if I cut in? Boone haven't had the pleasure of dancing with your cook." The barn quieted, sensing confrontation. Edison's jaw tightened, but Mary pressed his hand. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Edison, perhaps you'd dance with Miss Whitman." She took Carnegie's arm before anyone could protest, letting him lead her into the cleared space. He danced well. She'd give him that all polish and practice steps. "Quite the gathering," Carnegie said conversationally, like something from a storybook. "The noble poor, celebrating their simple pleasures." "We are simple people," Mary agreed. "We find joy where we can. Even when facing ruin, how quaint." His hand tightened on hers. "You know, I investigated you, Miss Calloway. Or should I say Miss Clemens, the doctor's daughter who couldn't keep her father alive, the woman who lived in sin, the opportunist who saw a lonely rancher and seized her chance." Mary kept her step steady despite the venom in his words. "You forgot the part where I make excellent biscuits." "This isn't a joke." "No," she agreed, meeting his cold eyes. "It's a dance, and when it's over, you'll still be a man who fouls springs and burns barns. I'll still be a woman who chose to stay and fight. The rest is just noise. I could ruin you. A few words in the right ears." "You already tried. I'm still here." "We're all still here." She smiled, bright as the lanterns. "That must frustrate you terribly." The dance ended. Mary curtsied formally, then turned her back on Carnegie, walking straight to Edison. The message was clear dismissal, more cutting than any words. "Everything all right?" Edison asked quietly. "Perfect. Did Garvey—" "Got what he needed. Gone to meet the railroad surveyor." He spun her into another dance. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Like I said, magnificent. Carnegie left soon after, Clara Whitman clinging to his arm, both faces dark with anger. The celebration continued, but now it felt like victory rather than defiance. Near midnight, as the dancing wound down, Garvey returned. His face told the story before his words. Surveyor confirmed the original routes: Boone's Draw, the Barton Place. Box 5 all outside Carnegie's claims. More than that, his fouling of the spring violates territorial water law. We've got grounds to stop him. The barn erupted in celebration. People who'd been ready to surrender hours before now cheered and embraced. The drought hadn't broken, but Carnegie's stranglehold had. It's not over, Edison warned when the chaos died down. He'll fight this. Let him, Florence declared. We've got law on our side now. And each other, Victoria added. That matters more. Mary stood in the barn doorway, watching neighbors become allies. Fear transformed to hope. Not a complete victory, the drought remained. Challenges loomed. But tonight, they'd won something. Regrets, Edison asked, joining her. About dancing with Carnegie none. Had to keep him distracted. I meant about choosing this fight. Mary looked out at the star-filled sky, vast and dry above the parched land. Thought of all she'd lost, all she'd found, all that remained to build. No regrets, she said firmly. This is home. These are our people. That's worth any fight? He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her head. When this is over, the drought, Carnegie, all of it, I want to marry you. Proper papers and everything. Is that a proposal? It's a promise, for when the time is right. Mary turned in his arms, studying his face in the lantern light. The time is right when we make it right. But yes, when this is over, yes. They sealed it with a kiss there in the doorway. While behind them, the community they'd helped forge continued celebrating survival, continued choosing hope over fear. The drought would last weeks more. Carnegie would challenge and scheme. But tonight, with legal proof secured and neighbors united, they'd turned a corner. And Mary Calloway, who'd started with nothing but a gold ring and stubborn pride, found herself rich beyond measure, not in water or cattle or land, but in the currency that mattered most. People who'd stand together when standing alone meant certain failure. The barn slowly emptied, families heading home under the vast sky. But the bonds forged in drought and dancing would last long after the rains finally came. Home, Edison asked. Home, Mary agreed. They walked together toward the house, past the dry creek bed that would flow again, past the kitchen where tomorrow she'd cook for whoever needed feeding, past all the markers of a life built on hope and hard work. Behind them, the last lantern in the barn went dark, but the light they'd kindled community, resistance, love that burned on. The red dust storm hit at dawn, turning the world to rust and shadow. Mary pressed a wet cloth over her nose and mouth, squinting through the kitchen window at the wall of dirt rolling across the plains. Somewhere out there, Edison and the men were trying to move the cattle to shelter. Can't see 10 feet, Roosevelt gasped, stumbling through the door. His face was caked with dirt, eyes red-rimmed. Boss says to seal everything tight. This one's bad. Mary was already moving, stuffing rags under doors, closing shutters, covering the water barrels. The drought had weakened everything: grassroots that should have held soil, spirits that should have held firm. Now the land itself was blowing away. Where are the others? She asked, helping Roosevelt wash the grit from his eyes. Jefferson and Napoleon took the North herd to Dead Horse Canyon. Washington's with Edison, trying to save the horses. He winced as she cleaned a cut on his forehead. Carnegie's men are out there too. Saw them pushing their herds onto our land during the storm. Of course they are. Mary's jaw tightened. Help me secure the smokehouse. We can't lose what meat we've preserved. They worked through the howling wind, the world reduced to a few feet of swirling dust. By the time they finished, Mary could barely breathe, her lungs burning with each intake of gritty air. Inside, she found Florence Barton and several other women who'd taken shelter when the storm caught them on the road. "This is Carnegie's doing," Florence declared, though Mary wasn't sure if she meant the storm or the chaos it enabled. "Mark my words, when this clears, he'll have taken whatever he could." "Then we'll take it back," Mary said firmly, though exhaustion weighed every word. Weeks of drought, days of fighting Carnegie's legal challenges, and now this nature itself seemed allied against them. The storm raged for hours. Mary kept coffee hot and food ready, knowing the men would need both when they returned. If they returned. She pushed that thought away, focusing on what she could control. Near noon, the wind began to ease. The dust settled slowly, revealing a transformed landscape. Familiar landmarks were obscured, fences buried, the whole world painted in shades of brown. Edison appeared like a ghost from the haze, Sherman and Washington flanking him. All three looked like they'd been carved from dirt. "Lost 12 head," Edison reported, voice rough. "Maybe more. Won't know until we can count proper." "And Carnegie?" Mary asked, already knowing. "His men pushed 3 dozen cattle onto our east pasture during the storm. Claimed they were just seeking shelter." Edison's laugh was bitter. "By tomorrow, he'll say they've been there all along." "What do we do?" "We fight smarter." Edison accepted the cup of water she offered, drinking carefully. "Garvey's due back from the capital today, if the territorial judge upheld our claims." But when Sheriff Garvey arrived that evening, his face told a different story. Judge ruled the water rights are unclear. He reported to the gathered ranchers. "Says we need a full survey. New documentation. Could take months." "Months we don't have," Cornelius Vanderbilt said heavily. "My wells are near dry, without access to the creek." "That's what Carnegie counted on," Victoria said. "He couldn't win outright, so he's playing for time." Mary watched the faces around her table weathered, worried, wearing down. These people had fought so hard, endured so much, but everyone had limits. "There might be another way," she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. "The railroad surveyor, he confirmed our land boundaries." "Yes, and Carnegie's been claiming cattle that wandered onto our property." She looked at Edison. "What if we turned his own tactics against him?" Understanding dawned in Edison's eyes. "You mean? I mean, maybe some of our cattle might wander, too, during the next storm, seeking shelter on land that has water." She kept her voice carefully neutral. "Of course, we'd collect them eventually, but if they happen to graze Carnegie's grass, drink from his wells while we sorted out the confusion." "That's rustling," someone protested. "That's survival," Florence countered, "and no more than what he's done to us." The room erupted in debate. Some called it madness, others necessity. Through it all, Mary watched Edison, saw him weighing honor against need. Finally, he spoke. "We don't steal, we don't become what we're fighting." The room deflated, but he continued. "However, if cattle panic in a storm, if they run toward water and safety, well, that's nature. And if it takes us time to sort out which cattle belong where, given the unclear documentation," he shrugged. "That's bureaucracy." Plans formed quickly. Not theft, but orchestrated chaos. The next storm and there would be another. The sky promised they'd be ready. But Carnegie moved first. Mary woke before dawn to the sound of horses. Many horses, moving fast. She reached for Edison, found his side of the bed empty, already cold. "Mary," Roosevelt's voice, high with panic. "They took him, Carnegie's men, they arrested the boss." She was out of bed and running, not bothering with a wrapper. In the yard, she found chaos. Washington bleeding from a head wound. Sherman holding Jefferson back from mounting pursuit. "What happened?" she demanded. Private warrant, Garvey said, appearing from the darkness. His face was grim. Carnegie got a judge in Denver to issue it. Claims Edison threatened him. Planned to rustle cattle. They took him an hour ago. You let them. Wasn't there. They came with federal marshals. Mary. Real ones. My hands were tied. Mary's mind raced. Carnegie had outmaneuvered them again, using the law as a weapon. Without Edison. No, she said it aloud, firm as iron. No, we don't fall apart. Jefferson, you're in charge of the ranch. Sherman, ride to every ally. We have time to call in favors. Roosevelt, get the women here. We're not waiting for the next storm. Mary, Garvey warned. Whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking Carnegie made a mistake. He took Edison but left me. She smiled, sharp and dangerous. He's about to learn why that was foolish. Within hours, Mary's kitchen became a war room. Victoria took charge of legal research, finding precedents and loopholes. Florence organized the women into teams, some to manage ranch work, others for what Mary carefully called special projects. Carnegie thinks we're helpless without our men. Mary addressed the gathered women. He's wrong. We've been managing households, raising children, surviving this frontier just as long as they have. Time to show what we can do when we stop being polite. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. If Carnegie wanted to play legal games, they'd give him more than he bargained for. Every woman here has a grievance, Victoria announced, waving papers. Lost cattle, fouled water, damaged property. We're filing charges, all of us, simultaneously. Paperwork storm, Florence added with grim satisfaction. Bury him in legal procedures. But Mary had something more direct in mind. That night, under cover of darkness, she led a group to Carnegie's prize, his newly drilled wells. We're not destroying them, she said firmly, seeing hesitation in some faces. We're modifying them. Carnegie's forgotten that water rights include responsibilities. They worked swiftly, not damaging the wells, but altering the mechanisms. Come morning, Carnegie's precious water would flow straight into carefully dug channels that led to communal watering areas. Share and share alike, Mary murmured, watching water begin its new course. Isn't that neighborly? Dawn brought predictable outrage. Carnegie himself appeared at Boone's draw, no longer sending subordinates. You've destroyed my property, he raged. Improved it, Mary corrected calmly. Water's flowing better than ever, right where thirsty cattle can reach it. Yours and ours. This is criminal. This is community. She stood straight, aware of the women arranged behind her, all armed with more than just determination. You want to discuss criminal, let's talk about arrested men, fouled springs, and stolen cattle. Carnegie's face purpled. You think you've won something? Your precious Edison sits in a Denver jail. One word from me, and he stays there. One word from you. Victoria stepped forward, papers in hand. Interesting, because we have several words. From your former bookkeeper. Sworn testimony about bribes, false claims, and conspiracy. Mary watched Carnegie pale. They'd found Ulysses Morse, convinced him to make his testimony official. Not enough to convict, perhaps, but enough to complicate Carnegie's life significantly. You're bluffing. Try us. Mary's voice was steel. Release Edison. Withdraw your false claims. Share water rights fairly, or we bury you in so much paper and scandal. You'll spend years in court. The standoff stretched taut around them. The morning sun illuminated the parched landscape, the redirected water channels, the faces of people pushed beyond endurance. Finally, Carnegie spoke. Gould, send word to Denver. Release Boone. Sir, do it. Carnegie's eyes never left Mary's. This isn't over. No, Mary agreed. But this part is, you'll share water. You'll respect boundaries. You'll stop trying to break us. Or Or we stop being ladies about it." Florence hefted her shotgun meaningfully. Carnegie left without another word, his empire of intimidation cracked by women who'd found their collective power. Edison returned at sunset, dusty and exhausted but whole. Mary met him at the gate, suddenly unsure. She'd taken command, made decisions, changed everything. "I hear you've been busy," he said softly. "Someone had to be." "Thank God it was you." He pulled her close, there in front of everyone. "When they took me, all I could think was that I'd failed. Failed the ranch, the people, you. But you didn't need me to save you." "I need you to stand beside me," Mary corrected. "There's a difference." "Yes," he agreed. "There is." The drought would last 2 more weeks. But something had shifted that day. Carnegie still owned land, still had wealth, but his stranglehold was broken. The wells flowed to common ground. The legal challenges died in paperwork. The community had learned its own strength. "You know he'll try again," Edison said that night, as they stood watching stars appear in the clear sky. "Maybe, but we'll be ready, all of us. The railroad's still coming. This land will be valuable." "Then we'd better make sure the right people benefit." Mary leaned into his warmth. "Starting with a certain wedding you promised." Edison laughed, the sound rich in the darkness. "Mary Calloway, are you proposing to me?" "I'm suggesting that a woman who can face down Alexander Carnegie deserves a proper wedding, papers and all." "When?" "When the rains come. When the grass is green and the creek runs full. When we can dance without dust in our teeth. That could be weeks." "Then we'd better start planning." She turned in his arms. "After all, we're partners. In all things." "In all things," he agreed, and kissed her under the vast sky. In the distance, thunder rumbled not dust this time, but the promise of rain. The drought would break, as droughts do. Carnegie would simmer and scheme, as men like him do, but here at Boone's Draw, people had learned to stand together, fight together, hope together. And Mary Calloway, who'd arrived with nothing but pride and a gold ring, had found everything home, purpose, love, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest strength comes from knowing when to stop being polite and start being powerful. The first drops of rain fell at midnight, gentle as tears, precious as promises. Mary stood at her kitchen window, watching the parched earth drink deep, and smiled. Tomorrow there would be work, always work. But tonight the rain fell. Edison slept peaceful in their bed, and all was right with her corner of the world. She'd fought for this. They all had. And they'd won. Spring came to Dustwater like a promise kept. The creek ran full again. Wildflowers painted the prairie in purple and gold, and the air itself seemed lighter, freed from drought's heavy hand. Mary stood on the porch of Boone's Draw, watching the transformed landscape with wonder. "Hard to believe it's the same place," Florence Barton said, joining her with a cup of coffee. 6 months ago, we were hauling water in buckets and praying for rain." 6 months ago, we were different people," Mary replied. "All of us." It was true. The drought and Carnegie's threats had forged them into something stronger than scattered ranchers. They'd become a community in the truest sense, bound by shared struggle and mutual aid. "Speaking of different," Florence grinned. "Shouldn't you be getting ready weddings in 2 hours? And you're still in your work dress." Mary laughed. "Old habits. Wanted to check the kitchen first. Make sure—" "Victoria and I have it handled. Today, you're not the cook. You're the bride." Florence's eyes softened. "Your father would be proud. Mary, you've built something good here." Inside the house, their house now, she and Edison had decided Mary found her wedding dress laid out on the bed. Not fancy by Eastern standards, but beautiful in its simplicity. White cotton with small blue flowers embroidered at the hem, made by the combined efforts of the ranch women over the past weeks. As she dressed, Mary touched the wooden box on the dresser. Inside lay 2 rings John's, which she'd carried so long, and a new one. Simple silver that Edison had made from melted coins. The past and future, side by side. "Mary," Victoria knocked softly. "Edison asked me to give you this." It was a letter, Edison's careful handwriting covering a single page. Asterisk, "My dearest Mary." Asterisk. "Today we make official what has been true since the day you threw that bucket. You and I belong together. Not because we need each other to survive, though we do. Not because the ranch runs better with both of us, though it does. But because somewhere between that first meal you cooked and the night you faced down Carnegie, I discovered that life without you is just existing. Asterisk, I can't promise easy years ahead. The railroad's coming, bringing change we can't imagine. There'll be other Carnegies, other droughts, other fights. But I promise to stand beside you through all of it. To build our life board by board, meal by meal, day by day. Asterisk, thank you for staying. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for choosing us. Asterisk, yours always, Edison Asterisk. Mary wiped tears carefully, mindful of the small amount of face powder Victoria had insisted on. Through the window, she could see guests arriving, neighbors, townspeople, even some who'd once whispered about her past, all here to celebrate new beginnings. The ceremony was held in the yard, under a bower of wildflowers the men had constructed with touching awkwardness. Sheriff Garvey stood ready to officiate, his badge polished bright for the occasion. "You clean up nice," Florence whispered as Mary emerged. She felt beautiful, not because of the dress or flowers, but because of the faces turning toward her with genuine joy. These people had seen her at her worst, desperate, frightened. Covered in dirt and soot from fighting fires, they'd stood with her anyway. Roosevelt played a wedding march on his guitar, joined by Napoleon's fiddle. The melody was simple but heartfelt, like everything else about this day. And then there was Edison, waiting at the makeshift altar, looking at her like she was the sunrise after endless night. He wore his best suit, the one usually reserved for funerals and legal meetings, but his smile transformed it into something celebratory. Mary walked alone, no one to give her away, because she was giving herself freely and with full knowledge of what that meant. Each step felt significant, crossing from the woman she'd been to the woman she was choosing to become. Friends. Garvey began when she reached Edison's side. "We gather today to witness something special. Not just a wedding, but a victory. These 2 people found each other in hardship and chose to build something lasting." Edison took her hands, calloused meeting calloused, both marked by work and weather. "Mary," he said, voice carrying clear, "you came to us seeking survival and gave us life. You brought more than skills, you brought heart. You taught us that community isn't just about proximity, but about choosing to care for each other. I promise to honor that lesson every day of our lives." Mary's carefully prepared words fled. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "Edison, you offered me a chance when I had nothing, but more than that, you offered me respect. You saw me not as someone to save, but as someone to stand beside. I choose to stand beside you, in drought and plenty, in struggle and joy, for all our days." They exchanged rings, his made by her determination to melt down old coins. Hers, crafted by his own hands from silver Napoleon had contributed, once part of his grandmother's tea service. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Kansas," Garvey proclaimed, "I declare you husband and wife, and may God help anyone who tries to come between you." Laughter rippled through the crowd as Edison kissed his bride, thorough and enthusiastic enough to earn cheers and a few good-natured catcalls. The celebration that followed was everything a frontier wedding should be: abundant food despite recent hardship, music that grew livelier as the afternoon wore on, and dancing that kicked up dust in the yard. Carnegie had sent a wedding gift, a letter formally withdrawing all claims to Boone's draw water rights, wrapped around a silver picture frame. The frame went on the mantel. The letter went into the stove. Probably poisoned anyway. Florence muttered, making Mary laugh. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in the shades of rose and gold, Edison found Mary taking a moment alone by the creek. Overwhelmed, he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Grateful, she corrected. For all of it, even the hard parts. Even Carnegie. Even him. He taught us what we could do when pushed. She turned in his arms. Though I'd prefer our future challenges to involve less gunfire. I'll see what I can arrange. He spun her slowly, dancing to music that drifted from the ongoing party. Any regrets? Mary thought of the road that had brought her here, loss and grief, desperation and fear, but also discovery and strength and unexpected love. No regrets, she said firmly. This is where I was meant to be. Mrs. Boone, Edison said, testing the words. Has a nice sound. It does, though I'll still be Mary Calloway in the kitchen. The men would mutiny if their cook suddenly changed names. They danced by the creek as stars emerged, while their guests celebrated into the night. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The railroad was indeed coming, bringing prosperity and problems in equal measure. There would be disputes over land as values soared, conflicts between old ways and new progress. But tonight, Mary Boone Nee Calloway danced with her husband by the water that had nearly broken them, surrounded by the community they'd helped forge, and knew that whatever came, they'd meet it together. Look, Edison said softly, pointing upstream. A family of deer had come to drink. Unafraid despite the human celebration nearby, they moved with quiet grace, taking what they needed, leaving the water undisturbed for others. See, Mary said, even the land knows this is a place of sharing now. Later, as the party wound down and guests began departing with wishes and embraces, Mary stood in her kitchen, their kitchen making coffee for the last lingering friends. The room that had been her sanctuary, her battlefield, her domain, now felt like the heart of something larger. Beautiful wedding, Victoria said, helping dry dishes. You two give us all hope. Hope for what? That this place can be more than just survival, that we can build something worth having, worth keeping, worth passing on. Through the window, Mary could see Edison and the men checking the animals one last time, the ordinary evening routine that would continue regardless of celebrations, the simple, necessary work that made everything else possible. We'll build it, Mary said with quiet certainty. All of us, together, board by board, meal by meal. Day by day, Victoria agreed, echoing Edison's letter. As the last guest departed and quiet settled over Boone's draw, Mary and Edison stood on their porch, watching the moon rise over the prairie. So, Mrs. Boone, Edison said, what now? Now, Mary smiled. Now we live, we work, we build, we show everyone, including Mr. Carnegie if he's watching, that the best revenge against those who try to break us is to thrive despite them. That's a lot to take on. Good thing there's two of us then. They went inside together, to the home they'd defended, in the community they'd helped forge, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The kitchen stove still glowed warm, coffee still waited in the pot, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the stars. Life at Boone's Draw would go on richer now, for the struggles survived, stronger for the bonds forged in hardship, and, at its heart, a woman who'd arrived with nothing but grief and a gold ring had found everything worth having: purpose, community, and love that could weather any storm. The door closed softly on the wedding day, but opened wide on all the days to come. Days of work and rest, challenge and triumph, ordinary moments that would weave together into a life worth living. In the morning, Mary would rise before dawn. As always, coffee would brew, biscuits would bake. Men would gather for breakfast before the day's labor. But now she'd wake beside Edison, building their future one sunrise at a time. The creek sang its endless song, flowing as it had before the drought, as it would long after they were gone. But for now, for tonight, it sang of promises kept and new beginnings, of a love that had grown from desperate soil into something enduring. Home, Mary thought, the word settling deep as roots. Not just a place, but a choice made daily, a stand taken, a life claimed against all odds. She'd fought for this, they all had. And in the end, that made it worth everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, courage, and community in the American frontier. I hope Mary and Edison's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening to this story from? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know where in the world these tales of the Old West are reaching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850, hit that like button. And don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover these tales of courage and romance from the American frontier. Your support means the world and helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, partners.